So today, I force myself to take breaks. I also implemented a decent timetable, time management and project management system that lets me set goals every day, reflect on them on a weekly basis, and see my progress throughout the weeks. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that eating less croissants and more fruits ultimately lead to a less stressed feeling, but the sum of all those routines truly made my life less stressed. Now, of course, I wasn't the only one who found out about that. The pattern I just described is commonly known as the habit loop. It's a broadly accepted heuristic, firstly discovered by B.J. Fogg and more recently used by Charles Duhigg in his book, The Power of Habits. In theory, a trigger starts a routine. Let's say me desperately looking for a hot, energizing drink in the morning. So I would walk into my kitchen to make a cup of coffee, but instead of a coffee, I would make a tea, which is the actual routine. And as a result, I would feel that the tea does the exact same thing the coffee would have done. I'm energized. And after a while, I wouldn't even bother about having a coffee anymore. So although I think this is a really nice routine, and it explains a lot of habits and routines, I think it's somehow missing something. The explanatory power comes from the trigger reward system, but it leaves a gap on what it takes on an individual level. Thinking about that made me realize that there are three, let's call them individual attributes I would name to successfully implement a new routine. And let's have a look at them. Discipline, in terms of self-disciplined regulation to a certain goal or rule. Motivation, in terms of the emotional and neuronal activity in pursuing that goal and seeing the benefit of it. And continuity, in terms of being able what you want to do over a long amount of time. Now, where all those three come together, I think it is more likely for you to really establish a new routine. But if you lack one of them, things can get quite difficult. And let me explain you why. Let's say we want to become a vegetarian and stop eating meat. So if you have the discipline and the motivation, but a lack of continuity, then you will probably start, but only over a short amount of time. Whereas if you have the continuity and the discipline, but a lack of motivation, then you have a lot of potential to start, but you probably won't because you're not seeing the benefit out of it. And if you have a lack of discipline, you will probably start, but you end up with not eating meat 3 out of 7 days. So you won't totally stop. Now, my panic disorder was one of those seismic events in life where you actually have a before and an after. And I made these hidden psychological processes and automatisms visible. And by that, I was able to break out of bad loops and create good new routines and find the way to my inner balance. Some of these routines, they stuck with me and others vanished, but that's okay. I would love to give you a step-by-step recipe to tell you what you have to do the same, but it's up to you to find the right combination of what works and what doesn't. Stress is really subjective. If you only feel, if you're telling yourself you're stressed, or if you're actually suffering from an enormous amount of stress, it has the same consequences. And if it's stop drinking coffee, watering your flowers, or meditating for 15 minutes each day that makes you a lesser stressed and happier person, that's up to you. Now, I could only touch the surface here of what it means to overcome a panic attack and what it means to establish new routines. But it is my deep hope that you have learned a thing or two today on how to break out of bad ones and how to create good ones. Whether it's the hamster wheel or the vicious circle of anxiety, most of us have been trapped in one of these loops. If you constantly seek to change yourself, itself might become a new routine.